My sister Claire handed me 3 suitcases, a diaper bag, and a car seat carrier outside the airport drop-off zone without even looking at me. She was already scanning the terminal entrance, her sunglasses pushed up on her head, her smile wide and easy. "You're a lifesaver, Natalie," she said, patting my arm like I was a golden retriever. "Just 2 weeks. The kids already know the routine." Her husband Aaron grabbed their matching luggage set and wheeled it toward the sliding doors. Neither of them looked back. I stood in the August heat with 3 children pressed against my legs, 5-year-old Cody, 4-year-old Mia, and 18-month-old Noah in my arms, watching them disappear into the crowd. That's when I noticed the travel folder tucked into the side pocket of the diaper bag. I almost didn't open it, but something made me pull it out. My eyes moved slowly down the itinerary. Paris, Rome, Santorini, Barcelona. Departure date, August 3rd. Return date, October 5th. 2 months. My throat tightened. Then my phone buzzed. A voice note from Claire to our mother. She hadn't meant to send it to me. Why pay a nanny when my sister works for free? Something inside me finally snapped. My name is Natalie Vaughn. I was 28 years old when I stood in that airport parking lot with a toddler on my hip and the truth burning in my chest. For 3 years I had been Claire's unpaid nanny. Not because I chose it, not because I loved it, but because every single time I tried to walk away, someone in my family reminded me what a good sister looked like. 3 years, 3 children, thousands of hours of my life poured into Claire's house, Claire's schedule, Claire's peace of mind. Meanwhile, my own life had slowly disappeared. My apartment was gone. My savings were nearly gone. My career had stalled. A relationship I cared about had slipped through my fingers while I was putting someone else's children to bed. And Claire? Claire had a bigger house, a newer car, a glowing social media page, and a habit of calling me her lifesaver whenever it suited her. I had believed for so long that I was helping family, that I was being a good sister. Standing there in that parking lot, I finally understood the truth. I hadn't been helping. I had been used. Started with a phone call. Claire's pregnancy with Cody had been difficult. She was placed on bed rest in the final weeks, and Aaron's job kept him traveling constantly. She called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice small and exhausted, and asked if I could come stay with her for a couple of weeks. I didn't think twice. I packed a bag, gave notice to my roommate, and drove 3 hours to Claire's house. 2 weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2 months. Every time I mentioned leaving, something happened. Claire had a hard week. The baby wouldn't sleep. Aaron was out of town again. My mother would call and remind me how much Claire needed me right now. So I stayed. Then Mia came along 18 months after Cody, and suddenly I wasn't just the helpful sister anymore. I was the person who made everything run. I was the one who got up at night, managed the tantrums, packed the lunches, and handled every small emergency while Claire recovered and rested and gradually returned to her normal life. And somehow, without anyone officially deciding it, caring for Claire's children became my full-time existence. Nobody asked if it was what I wanted. By the time Noah was born, the rules had completely changed, even though nobody had said them out loud. Claire stopped asking me for help. She started telling me. I would get texts on Tuesday mornings that read, "Kids are with you tonight. Aaron and I have dinner at 7. No question mark. No if you're free." Just an announcement like I was a subscription service she had signed up for and forgotten was even running. I remember sitting at my laptop one afternoon, halfway through an online course I was taking to update my marketing skills, when a message came through from Claire. I signed Cody up for swimming lessons. Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4. You'll handle pickup. That was it. I stared at the screen for a long time. I tried to find the words to explain that I had my own things going on, that my time had value, that I had a life outside her house and her calendar. But by the time I opened my mouth, I already knew what would happen. My mother would call. Claire would cry. And somehow I would end up the one apologizing. So I went to the swimming lessons. About a year into living at Claire's house, I overheard something I was never supposed to hear. She was on the phone with her friend Donna, sitting at the kitchen island while I bathed Mia in the next room. Her voice was relaxed and cheerful. "Full-time childcare in this area runs about $25 an hour, she said, laughing softly. "Do you have any idea how much money we've saved?" Aaron ran the numbers. It's tens of thousands of dollars. I kept scrubbing Mia's hair, keeping my face completely neutral. Then Claire said something that should have woken me up right then and there. Honestly, Natalie will never stop. She's too soft to say no. Too soft. Not too kind. Not too generous. Not too devoted. Too soft. Like I was something easy to bend. Something that would never push back. I drained the tub and wrapped Mia in a towel. And I told myself it was just the way Claire spoke to her friends. That she didn't really mean it that way. That she appreciated me, even if she wasn't always great at showing it. I kept telling myself that story for 2 more years. I was completely wrong. His name was Paul. We met at a friend's birthday dinner 2 years into my time at Claire's house. He was funny and thoughtful and patient, and he made me feel like a real person again, not just a stand-in parent moving between routines. We went on 4 dates in 6 weeks. They were the best 6 weeks I had experienced in a long time. Then we planned a weekend trip together. Just 2 nights away. I had already packed my bag and arranged for my mother to help Claire with the kids for once. The night before we were supposed to leave, Claire called me in tears. Her regular sitter had canceled last minute. Aaron was in Chicago for work. The kids were already unsettled and she couldn't manage alone. I canceled on Paul. He was quiet on the phone for a moment. "This keeps happening, Natalie," he said. Not angry. Just tired. He was right. It had happened twice before. Small things, last-minute changes, me disappearing from plans we had made together. He never called again. I told myself I was fine with it. I wasn't fine at all. I cried in the laundry room so the children wouldn't hear me. Whenever I got close to saying no, my mother stepped in. She had a quiet way of framing everything so that I was always the selfish one for even thinking about my own needs. She never raised her voice. She never had to. "Claire has 3 small children, Natalie. You're single. What exactly is going on in your life that's so important?" That sentence came in different forms depending on the situation, but the meaning was always the same. My needs didn't count because I had fewer responsibilities. As though wanting time and freedom and a life of my own were luxuries you had to earn. She praised Claire endlessly, called her a supermom, told everyone at family gatherings how beautifully Claire managed her household. Nobody ever mentioned that I was running half of what Claire was being celebrated for. My mother genuinely believed she was being supportive. I understood that. But somewhere along the way her version of supporting Claire had turned into teaching me that I simply mattered a little less. I became the helper. The backup. The one who filled in the gaps without complaint. Not the daughter who also deserved a full life. Just the safety net. 2 years in, I received a phone call that could have changed everything. And then I let it disappear. A marketing firm in the city had found my online portfolio and reached out for an interview. The role was exactly what I had studied for. Strong salary. Clear advancement. The kind of position I had pushed to the back of my mind and trained myself to stop thinking about. There was one requirement. Relocation. I told Claire. She cried for 3 hours. Not quietly and privately. She sat at the kitchen table and cried in front of the children in front of me, and then on the phone to our mother with the door open. "You're abandoning us," she kept saying. "You're abandoning your nephews and your niece." My mother called shortly after to explain how much the children needed stability right now. How Cody had already experienced so much change. How this simply wasn't the right moment. I turned the job down. The firm filled the position within a week. I remember sitting in the spare bedroom that night, completely still, staring at the ceiling. That opportunity never came back around. And nobody in my family ever acknowledged what I had given up. A few months before the airport trip, I was washing dishes in Claire's kitchen when I heard her talking to Aaron in the living room. She didn't know I could hear her. "If Natalie ever actually leaves," she said, "we're looking at $60,000 a year minimum just for proper childcare coverage." Aaron laughed. "She's not going anywhere," he said. "She doesn't have anywhere to go." I stood completely still with my hands in the warm soapy water. I had given up my apartment 18 months earlier because it made more sense for me to stay at Claire's full time. I had let Paul walk away. I had turned down the marketing position. I had missed birthday gatherings and quiet evenings and weekends that were simply mine. And Aaron and Claire weren't even grateful for any of it. They were relieved. Because I was free. Because I was manageable. because they had correctly calculated that I had taken my own life apart so thoroughly that I had no real options left. That night I lay in the spare bedroom unable to fall asleep. Something hard and quiet had shifted inside me. I wasn't ready to speak yet, but I was done. So there I was, back to that August afternoon in the airport parking lot. The heat pressed down on everything. Mia was tugging at my sleeve. Cody was asking about snacks. Noah was heavy and warm against my chest, already beginning to fuss. I stood there holding a 2-month European travel itinerary in one hand and a diaper bag in the other, with Claire's voice playing back inside my head. Why pay a nanny when my sister works for free? She had laughed when she said it. Real laughter. Light and easy. Like it was clever. Like I was clever. Like the 3 years I had poured into her life were a neat little trick she had pulled off without anyone noticing. I looked down at the 3 children watching me. None of this was their fault. They were small and confused and they needed someone steady. I wasn't going to take any of it out on them. But Claire had crossed a line she could not come back from. I loaded the children into my car, buckled each one in carefully, and pulled out of the parking lot. My hands were completely steady on the wheel. For the first time in 3 years I had a plan forming. That evening, after the children were asleep, I sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop open in front of me. I created a blank spreadsheet. At the top I typed, childcare hours Natalie Vaughn. Then I started going back through everything I could document. I checked my phone calendar. I went through old text threads where Claire had sent me pickup times and schedule changes. I scrolled through emails about school events and pediatric appointments that I had managed. I had far more records than I expected because I had always been the one coordinating the details. I started filling in the columns methodically. Date, number of hours, type of care provided, overnight or daytime shift. I went back to the very beginning, the 2 weeks that became 2 years, every covered weekend, every vacation, every last-minute evening call. Every summer week I spent running school holiday activities instead of living my own life. The rows filled up quickly. I was careful and precise. I treated it exactly like a work project, without emotion, without exaggeration. I worked past midnight. When I finally saved the file and closed the laptop, my hands were trembling slightly. Not from sadness. From absolute clarity. The next morning I researched childcare rates. I already had a rough idea from the phone call I had overheard between Claire and her friend Donna, but I needed exact figures. I looked up 3 separate professional nanny agencies operating in our area and compared their published hourly rates. The average for standard daytime care came to $24 per hour. Overnight and weekend rates were higher. Some agencies listed up to $30 for those shifts. I chose the conservative number. $24 applied evenly across all hours. I was not trying to stretch the figure. I needed it to be impossible to argue with. I applied the rate to every row in the spreadsheet. Then I clicked the total. I stared at the number for a full minute without moving. $74,860. I calculated it 3 separate times before I let myself accept it. 3 years. Thousands of hours. A career detour. A relationship I lost. An apartment I gave up. A life placed permanently on hold. When I rounded to the nearest clean figure for the formal invoice, the total became $75,000. I sat back slowly. I felt no anger in that moment. Just a cold, quiet certainty that had been a long time coming. I did not call Claire. I did not send her a long emotional message about how I felt. I did not contact our mother. I did not post anything publicly. I gave nobody any warning that something was coming. Instead, I continued caring for the 3 children exactly as I always had. School pickups, bedtime stories, breakfast, bath time, all of it done properly and with care. But at night, after the house was quiet, I was building something. I formatted the spreadsheet into a proper invoice. I looked at billing templates used by professional nanny agencies and childcare providers. I made the document clean and formal. Date of service, hours rendered, rate applied, subtotal per week, and a running total at the bottom of every page. It looked like something you would receive from any legitimate professional service. I also began logging current hours in real time as Claire's trip continued. Every meal prepared. Every school run. Every late night spent settling Noah through his fussing. Each day was added to the invoice as it happened. I want to be clear about why I was doing this. Not to punish anyone, but because my time had a real value. And it was long past time for someone to face that. The 2 months Claire was away were the longest and strangest of my life. I was doing exactly what I had always done, managing 3 children, keeping the house running, handling every small crisis that came through the door. Cody had a difficult stretch at school in September and needed extra support with his reading. Mia went through a phase of refusing everything except plain buttered pasta for 2 straight weeks. Noah got his first ear infection and cried through 3 consecutive nights without stopping. I handled every single one of those things alone. And every night, after the children were finally asleep, I opened my laptop and updated the invoice. Meanwhile, Claire posted photographs daily. The Eiffel Tower at golden hour. A beach in Santorini with a long drink in her hand. A candlelit dinner in Rome with her head resting on Aaron's shoulder. Caption after caption about feeling restored and grateful. And finally like herself again. She wrote about the village it takes to raise children. That village was me. Just me. Alone in her house in the dark, raising her children while she photographed herself in European sunshine. I saved every single post. I took screenshots of every caption. Not as weapons. Just because I needed to remember exactly what this had looked like from where I was standing. The post that finally cracked something open in me came in mid-September. Claire uploaded a photograph of herself on a cliffside somewhere in Greece. The light was golden and warm behind her. Both arms were stretched wide, her face turned up toward the sky. The caption read, "Finally breathing after years of exhausting motherhood. Every mama needs this. You cannot pour from an empty cup." It received over 3,000 likes within a day. Comments poured in. "You deserve this so much. The most dedicated mom. So inspiring, queen." I set my phone face down on the kitchen counter and stood quietly for a moment. Then I picked it up and scrolled back through her last 30 posts. Not once had she mentioned me. Not a single update said her sister was holding things together at home. Not one thank you. Not one acknowledgement that a real human being was caring for her children every single day while she recharged. She had built an entire public image around being a devoted, exhausted mother. And that image had been built entirely on my invisible labor. I opened my laptop that evening and added another week to the invoice. The total kept climbing. In the middle of October, about 6 weeks into Claire's trip, her mother-in-law came to visit. Her name was Ruth. She was a quiet, practical woman with sharp eyes and a habit of watching things carefully before she spoke. Aaron's family was different from mine. Less loud, less emotional. Ruth had always been polite to me over the years, but we had never been particularly close. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon while I was helping Cody with a school project at the kitchen table, simultaneously feeding Noah in his high chair, and keeping one ear on Mia who was playing in the living room. Ruth stood in the kitchen doorway for a few seconds before she stepped inside. She watched me move from one child to the next without stopping, answering Cody's questions, wiping Noah's chin, calling to Mia to check she was okay, stirring something on the stove. Then she pulled out a chair and sat down at the table. "Do you do all of this every single day?" she asked quietly. I looked up at her. "Pretty much," I said simply. Ruth nodded once. She looked slowly around the kitchen at the 3 children, then back at me. Her expression said far more than any words would have. Ruth stayed for dinner and helped me with bath time without being asked. She was good with the children, patient and calm. Cody warmed up to her quickly. Later that night, after the children were in bed, I walked past the guest room toward the kitchen for a glass of water. Her voice carried clearly through the door. She was on the phone with someone. "She has been raising those children more than their own mother," Ruth said, her tone firm and unhurried. "I am not exaggerating. She manages everything in this house. Those 3 children would fall apart without her, and neither Claire nor Aaron seems to understand what they are actually dealing with." A brief pause. "No. What's happening here is not right. It has not been right for a very long time." I stood in the hallway without moving. Then I walked slowly to the kitchen and stood at the window in the dark with my arms folded. I had spent 3 years quietly questioning myself, wondering if I was too sensitive, if I was imagining how one-sided everything had become, if maybe this was simply how family worked sometimes and I was the unreasonable one for wanting something different. Ruth had seen the full picture in a single afternoon. I had not been imagining anything. Claire came home on the 5th of October glowing. She walked through the door with a deep suntan, 2 new suitcases stuffed with things she had bought for herself, and a small gift bag for the children that she had clearly grabbed from a duty-free shop somewhere between boarding gates. The children ran to her and she scooped them all up at once, laughing and kissing their faces. I stood near the kitchen doorway and watched. She looked over their heads at me and smiled warmly. "You are an absolute star," she said. "Honestly, I do not know what I would do without you." She said it exactly the way she always did. Light and easy and automatic. Like it cost her absolutely nothing. Because for 3 years it hadn't cost her a single thing. That was precisely the point. Aaron walked past me carrying suitcases and gave me a brief nod. "All good?" he asked, already heading for the stairs. "All good," I said. I helped Claire settle the children back into their routines. I made sure the house was in order. I stayed calm and polite through the entire evening. And when they were all settled in and the lights were low, I placed a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter. Claire noticed the envelope almost immediately. She came back into the kitchen for a glass of water and stopped when she saw it sitting on the counter, her name written neatly on the front in my handwriting. She picked it up and looked across at me with a small, easy smile. "What is this?" she asked. "An invoice," I said. She laughed briefly. The kind of soft laugh you use when you are sure someone is joking and you are waiting for them to admit it. "An invoice for what?" "For 3 years of childcare," I said. I broke it down week by week. The rate I used is based on the standard local nanny agency rate. I kept the figure conservative. She studied me for a moment, still holding the half-smile, still deciding whether this was a joke. "Natalie, come on. Everything is fully documented," I said. "Every hour is accounted for. You can cross-check it against your own calendar if you want to." She looked down at the envelope in her hand. The smile dropped slowly from her face. She slid her finger under the sealed edge. I watched her unfold the invoice and begin reading, her eyes moving carefully down the first page. I did not move. I did not say another word. I simply waited. Claire's expression changed completely as she reached the final page. She stared at the total without making a sound for a long moment. Then she screamed, $75,000? Her voice hit every wall in the kitchen. The number came out of her mouth like it had physically struck her somewhere painful. Aaron appeared at the top of the stairs immediately. "What's going on? Look at this." Claire thrust the pages toward him. "Look at what she has done." Aaron came down the stairs, took the invoice and flipped through it carefully. His face was harder to read than hers. He kept scanning the pages without speaking. "These are the standard agency rates," he said, almost to himself. "I do not care what the rates are." Claire snapped. "You do not invoice family. That is not how family works." I kept my voice level. "You do not use family as unpaid labor either," I said. "And yet here we are." Claire turned to face me fully, her eyes bright with something between tears and panic. "This is completely insane," she said. "After everything I have done for you over the years." I looked at her steadily. "What exactly have you done for me, Claire?" She opened her mouth. Then she closed it again. The kitchen was completely silent. My mother called at 9 o'clock the following morning. I already knew Claire had spoken to her. I could hear it in the tone of the very first word she said. "Natalie." I let her go through the whole script without interrupting. Family does not charge family. How could I do this to my own sister? This was not how they raised me. I was being calculating and selfish. Did I have any idea how hard Claire worked every single day? I waited until she had finished completely. Then I said calmly, "I want to walk you through the spreadsheet." "I am not interested in a spreadsheet." 3,482 hours, I said. "That is my documented count, and I know it is an underestimate because I did not keep detailed records during the first 8 months. I also turned down a position paying $60,000 a year because Claire asked me to stay. I ended a relationship. I surrendered my apartment. I stopped building my career." Silence on the other end. 3,000 hours, I repeated quietly. "At the standard professional rate." My mother said nothing for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its firmness entirely. "I didn't realize it had grown that large," she said softly. 2 days after Claire returned, Ruth called Aaron. I did not know about that conversation until Claire told me herself, standing in the kitchen with a voice that had gone very flat and tired. Ruth had already researched childcare costs in our area before she even left after her visit. She had looked up rates from nanny agencies, after-school programs, and overnight care providers and compared figures carefully. She told Aaron that the invoice I had prepared was accurate. She told him that what had been taking place in that house for 3 years was not a normal family arrangement, and that if I had been a professional hired through an agency, they would have paid those exact rates without a single question. Then Ruth said something that apparently ended every remaining argument between Claire and Aaron. You employed a full-time nanny for 3 years at no cost. You simply never told her that was her role. Claire sat across from me at the kitchen table when she passed this on. She was not screaming anymore. She looked genuinely exhausted. Aaron's mother thinks I exploited you, Claire said. I looked at her without hesitation. His mother is right, I said. Claire stared at the table between us. I had prepared myself for more arguing, more tears, more dramatic redirecting of blame. Instead, she just sat there quietly. For the first time in 3 years, she had nothing left to say. Word moved through the extended family faster than either of us had expected. Our aunt called first. Then our cousin Bree. Then a close friend of Claire's from church who had watched this arrangement up close for years and had quietly wondered about it. Each person asked a version of the same question. How long had Natalie actually been doing all of this? When the honest answer came out, 3 years full-time unpaid, including 2 months covering a luxury European vacation, the tone of every conversation shifted. I noticed it at a small family lunch the following weekend. Fewer pitying glances in my direction. More direct ones. An older aunt who had always quietly dismissed me as the single one took my hand across the table and said, I should have been paying closer attention all along. Claire was subdued the entire afternoon. She had spent 3 years being praised as the devoted supermom. Now the people around her were doing the arithmetic. My mother found me alone in the kitchen and pulled me gently aside. People are asking some difficult questions, she said quietly. Good, I replied. She studied me for a moment. I owe you an apology, Natalie, she said. A proper one. I did not tell her it was fine. It wasn't fine. But I nodded because she genuinely meant it. That was enough for now. 2 weeks after Claire returned from Europe, I sat down with her at the kitchen table one final time. I had already viewed 2 apartments in the city. I had already sent a careful email to the marketing firm. A long shot, I knew, but one I owed myself. I had already begun thinking seriously about what my life was going to look like from this point forward. I placed the invoice on the table between us. Claire looked at it like she did not want to touch it. I am not going to chase you for $75,000, I said. She looked up at me slowly. But I am not forgiving it as a favor either, I continued. Here is what I am offering. I walk away from the full amount. Every cent. And in exchange, things change permanently. No more surprise babysitting announcements. No more guilt trips through our mother. No more treating my time and my schedule as something that belongs to you by default. If you ever need my help, you ask me the way one person asks another person. If I say no, you accept that answer. No crying. No phone calls. No pressure. Just no. Claire was quiet for a long time. The kitchen clock ticked steadily between us. Then she said, okay. Not loudly. Not with any remaining resistance. Simply okay. And for the first time in a long time, I actually believed her. 6 months later, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. The marketing firm had called back. Not the original role, but a newer position that was actually a stronger fit for where I was now. I accepted it without hesitating. Nobody cried. Nobody called our mother. I packed my things on a Saturday morning in November and drove away from Claire's house. And the 2 hours on the road to my new apartment were the quietest and most peaceful I had experienced in years. I arranged my space exactly the way I wanted it. I kept whatever hours suited me. I cooked what I felt like and left the washing up for tomorrow if I was tired. Small freedoms that felt enormous after so long without them. Claire and I still spoke occasionally. The calls were shorter now, more careful, more honest. She had hired a part-time nanny and had quietly stopped scheduling her life around my availability. My mother apologized properly one Sunday afternoon over coffee. We were rebuilding things between us slowly and without rushing. And sometimes when Claire called to ask if I was free over a holiday weekend, I said the two words I had spent 3 years being too afraid to say. Sorry. I'm busy. And I meant every syllable. The invoice was never paid, but it was worth every single cent.